Everyone, Maury Mo here with the top Kylo Ren or Ben Solo moments of Legacy of Vader issue 8. Now, this issue is not told from Kylo Ren's point of view, so we have less of him in it, though the story at hand is about him. So this story is from the point of view of the current and new leader of the Knights of Ren, Tava Ren. And this story is certainly interesting as it answers some questions about why the Knights of Ren were absent for most of the sequel trilogy, and what life was like for the Knights of Ren after Kylo took over from killing the former leader, Ren. So we learn quickly enough that the Knights of Ren are no longer with Kylo since at least shortly before The Force Awakens, and that the breakup did not end well. The Knights of Ren did have another leader take over before its current leader, Tava, which does raise the question as to why members like Vicryl didn't take over when Kylo left, and I'm guessing that they didn't really want to fight each other for leadership, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. So the story begins with Tava Ren and the gang making an attack on some monks to steal their treasures to fund their lifestyle. The monk points out that they are nothing more than scoundrels to Tava's chagrin. But, of course, it's the truth. The rest of the knights see that this heist is going bad and quickly leave Tava behind. Of course, Tava pulls through just fine and catches up to the knights, which leads to the question that Vicryl and Karuk dread answering. Why did they just abandon Tava? Tava demands an explanation for their cowardice, and the night begins the story of Kylo, who Tava has somehow not been made aware of up to this point. She only knows about the last guy named Badat, who she killed to take over the Knights of Ren. We don't know how Badat himself took over, but this story isn't about him, it's about Kylo. And so we get the recap of how Kylo took over the Knights of Ren with a traditional good death by killing the previous Ren, and that is all covered in the comic Rise of Kylo Ren by Charles Soule. And then we start getting a montage of how Kylo did a very good job of finding places to rob and raid, and for people to kill. But the really interesting point here is two things. One, Kylo Ren is not a party guy or a social person, much like his dyad partner Rey, in fact. But secondly, at this point in his life, which is before The Force Awakens, he is in a very dark place, more so than the rest of the knights who kind of just want to party and dance. The Knights of Ren have always been just barely dark side users and not terribly ambitious, in large part because they are very aware of their limitations. In previous comics set during the original trilogy, Ren was very keenly aware of that fact. The best the group can muster up is a bit of some hedonism while they are still alive. But as Karuk says, Kylo is ambitious, or rather, the voice that the Knights of Ren hear him talking to by himself, that voice is ambitious, and that voice talking to Kylo Ren is calling the shots and directing their task to specific purposes. Now, we, the audience, can guess at this point that this is Snoke, but at the time, Vicryl and the others didn't really know that, though they did know who Snoke was. And in the most interesting part of this comic, we come to the scene that we see in Rey's vision in The Force Awakens. The Knights of Ren are sent to kill a warlord at Snoke operating through Kylo's behest. This scene is the very vision that Rey has while in Maz Kanata's castle. Kylo kills the warlord and steps forward to look at someone. We now know that someone was Snoke. Snoke is before them all, and the warlord's death a moment ago is completely irrelevant, because this is the day that Snoke sends his stormtroopers and Praetorian guards after the rest of the Knights of Ren. Vicryl and his friends realized that Snoke was an absolute monster and had been using them as some training tool for his student, Kylo. It was now time for them to be gone, not even at Kylo's hand, but the forces of Snoke. Kylo seemed surprised at this turn of events, but he does not defy Snoke. Because Snoke doesn't think the Knights of Ren are worthy to be in either man's presence, and so they are chased out like the scoundrels they are. It's pretty much another way of Snoke reinforcing that the Knights of Ren are the bottom of the pile of Force users, the Sith. And of course, Snoke is a puppet of the Sith Lord Palpatine, considers the Knights of Ren beneath them. And I have to say, I love how one of the knights says, "We're your guys." I don't know how genuine the sentiment is, but given how none of them took over leadership, a part of me does think that some of the Knights of Ren do care about each other to a degree. They take an injured Vicryl with them, and I think it's why they don't take over the Knights of Ren when Kylo leaves, and they let some other guy take over. They'd rather not fight each other because they are a little close to each other or do like each other generally. And of course, it would explain why the Knights of Ren later have no problem betraying Ben Solo in the Rise of Skywalker. They haven't forgotten this betrayal, even if it was because of Snoke. Ultimately, they likely hoped that Kylo would try to fight for them a little bit. But even if Karuk and Vicryl did forgive Kylo, and we know that the Knights of Ren do join him in Rise of Skywalker at the movie's beginning, it wouldn't matter because Palpatine would manipulate them again because he is a Sith Lord, and they can't really escape him if he sets his sights on them. Which is why the Knights of Ren have historically tried to keep out of the way of the Sith, because otherwise they just get exploited by them or killed outright, and the Knights of Ren were lucky to survive this incident here. And so concludes the tale of what happened with Kylo and his Knights of Ren before The Force Awakens. Or at least partly so, because our story ends with Tava Ren planning on taking Kylo down through a bit of some deception as we see her swear service to him. What do you think will happen next? Do you think the Knights of Ren ever cared for Kylo or each other? Let me know in the comments, and may the Force be with you.